مش عارف hold it.
Good afternoon. You're watching the English newscast on this May 25th. It's Future Television. I'm Yumna Naufal, and these are today's headlines. Future movement leader PM Saad Hariri snaps back at Hezbollah's Nasrallah after the latter warns he might intervene in Arsail. The so-called consultative gathering warns that the presidential vacuum is threatening the existence of the Lebanese state and entity. And the Syrian government aircraft launched at least 15 strikes in and around the ancient city of Palmyra following its fall to the Islamic State group. Future movement leader former PM Saad Hariri snapped back at Hezbollah chief Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah after the latter warned that his group might intervene militarily in the outskirts of the Bekaa border town of Arsail to oust jihadist militants entrenched there. Nasrallah noted that if the regime, Hezbollah and their allies win in Syria, they would represent the guarantee for all Lebanese, warning that the future movement and its leaders would be the first victims of the Islamic State and Nusra Front groups take a foothold in Lebanon. Hariri hit back shortly after Nasrallah's speech, underlining that the defense of the land, sovereignty and dignity is not Hezbollah's responsibility in Arsail nor in the outskirts. Slamming Nasrallah's insistence on the so-called army-people resistance equation, Hariri emphasized that there is no golden equation to protect Lebanon other than the equation of national consensus and putting an end to the policies of the threats, intimidation, and raised fists. Hezbollah leader Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah said his fighters would expand their presence in Syria and called on Saudi Arabia to stop airstrikes in Yemen. Speaking to Hezbollah supporters in Nabatieh via a video link, Nasrallah said, quote, "We are present in many places, and I tell you we will be present wherever this battle is required. I call upon Saudi Arabia to stop its aggression in Yemen and facilitate the political dialogue, which was promised in Geneva within days, and seriously open the door for a Yemeni solution that ends the war and the catastrophe." He said this referring to the ongoing situation in Yemen, and also said that an offensive his group is leading in the mountainous region of Qalamun along the border between Syria and Lebanon will last until our borders are secured. He said the residents of the area will not accept the presence of terrorists or takfiris in any of the Bekaa or Arsail outskirts. And takfiri, of course, is a term for a hardline Sunni Muslim, he says, who sees other Muslims as infidels, often as a justification for fighting them. The so-called consultative gathering warned that the presidential vacuum is threatening the existence of the Lebanese state and entity. It's been a year to the day that President Michel Sleiman ended his mandate. And in a statement read by Qazi, the gathering, which is led by former President Sleiman, the election of a head of state is necessary, he said, to protect the unity of Lebanon and all the Lebanese. All those boycotting the electoral sessions are to be blamed for the failure to elect a new head of state. After a meeting with Kataib leader Amin Jmayil held at his residence in Sin el-Fil, the rival camps have failed to elect a successor to Sleiman despite around 23 parliamentary sessions, but there was lack of quorum. The MPs have not met the two-thirds that are required to hold an electoral session, and the meeting was attended by Sleiman Jmayil and 8 cabinet ministers loyal to the party. Hezbollah fighters have captured more territory in Syria's Qalamun mountains 3 weeks into an offensive to oust jihadists from the rugged border region. Hezbollah sources said the fighters captured several highlands northeast of the outskirts of Nahleh along Lebanon's eastern mountain range shortly before midday. Hezbollah fought a fierce battle with Syria-based militants on the outskirts of Nahleh in October, sparked by a jihadi ambush on party posts. But Hezbollah acknowledged that the death of 8 fighters at the time. The Syrian army and Hezbollah launched the battle for Qalamun earlier this month, capturing dozens of militant bases and driving the jihadis north toward the outskirts of Lebanon's Arsail. 3 Hezbollah fighters were killed fighting in Qalamun last week, bringing the party's death toll since the launch of the Qalamun offensive to at least 16. Syrian Syrian government aircraft launched at least 15 strikes in and around the Asian city of Palmyra following its fall to the Islamic State group. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said the raids were the most intense since the jihadis overran the city on Thursday. The strikes targeted several areas of the city, including some close to the city's famed Greco-Roman ruins, a UNESCO World Heritage Site. ISIS is accused of executing hundreds of people in and around Palmyra since it swept into the oasis city last week after its lightning advance across the desert from its stronghold in the Euphrates Valley to the east. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said it had documented the executions of at least 217 people, among them 67 civilians, including 14 children. Some of those killed had been beheaded, Abdurrahman said. He is, of course, the director of the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. And he added that the jihadists had also taken 600 people prisoners. Heavy artillery clashed between Yemen's dominant Houthi rebel group and local fighters, and it shook the southern cities of Taiz and Dalia. Residents are saying that a Yemeni official said U.S. peace talks set for Geneva later this week had been delayed. Militiamen seized the main security directorate and strategic mountaintop buildings from the Houthis in Dalia, a bastion of a secessionist movement in Yemen's formerly independent south, much of which has been destroyed in more than 2 months now of fighting. 10 soldiers loyal to the Houthis and 3 southern militiamen were killed. Fighters and residents in the southern city of Taiz said Houthi fighters are pushing back tribal and Islamist militiamen amid heavy street combat. Also, Arab raids hit a military base loyal to the Houthis in the capital, Sana'a. Coming up next, a Lebanese production wins the top award for short films at the 2015 festival in Cannes. Stay with us, all the details when we return. Welcome back. You're watching the 4:20 o'clock news here on Future Television. Former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert was sentenced to 8 months in prison in Jerusalem for unlawfully accepting money from a U.S. supporter. Olmert was convicted in March in a retrial in Jerusalem District Court. And the sentencing comes in addition to a 6-year prison sentence he received last year in a separate bribery conviction. The sentence ensures the end of Olmert's political career, capping the dramatic downfall of a man who only years earlier led the country and hoped to bring about a historic peace agreement with the Palestinians. Olmert's lawyer, Yair Rozowski, said his legal team would appeal to Israel's Supreme Court. A Tunisian soldier opened fire on comrades near Parliament, killing some of them before being shot dead, but the Interior Ministry said it was not a terrorist attack. The shooting at the Bouchoua barracks, not far from the Bardo National Museum, where jihadist gunmen killed 21 foreign tourists and a policeman in March, triggered a security alert across the Bardo district. Defense Ministry spokesman Belhassan Ouaslati said the shooter had been killed but declined to give a death toll among the other soldiers. Neither spokesman gave any motive for the shooting. But Tunis has been on high alert ever since the March massacre at the Bardo Museum, which dealt a heavy blow to the vital tourism industry. A month after a magnitude 7.8 earthquake hit Nepal, residents of the capital city of Kathmandu continue to live in fear of further aftershocks. 2 powerful earthquakes devastated Nepal on the 25th of April and 12th of May, killing nearly 8,700 people and injuring 16,800 others. Hundreds of families are still living in open camps and temporary shelters, and many schools remain shut. The earthquakes damaged not only homes and office buildings, but destroyed a large number of heritage sites and ancient temples. The Himalayan nation faces billions of US dollars in reconstruction and rehabilitation costs and has appealed to foreign governments and agencies for help. Government officials say the coming monsoon rains are a major concern, especially for those whose homes are either completely destroyed or are too damaged to move back in. U.S. troops stationed in Afghanistan paused to remember the fallen at Memorial Day services. At Resolute Support Mission headquarters in Kabul, Afghanistan, U.S. General John Campbell attended a wreath-laying ceremony to honor soldiers killed in combat since the war began more than a decade ago. More than 2,300 American soldiers and more than 1,100 coalition soldiers have lost their lives in action during the last 14 years in Afghanistan. The holiday was marked this year as the U.S. and its allied forces opened a new chapter of their mission in the country, moving from a combat role to supporting, assisting, and advising the Afghan security forces. Thousands gathered on the grounds of the U.S. Capitol to attend the annual Memorial Day concert to honor American servicemen and women who died during their service. Patriotic music and personal tributes were also part of the annual tradition, and Chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff, General Martin Dempsey, paid tribute to those.
There is nothing more profoundly American than Memorial Day. Throughout our history, American sons and daughters have willingly laid down their lives to strengthen our nation and preserve its freedoms. Indeed, the greatest of this republic is founded in their selfless service. They rest quietly now beneath chalk-white headstones here at home, or in battlefield graves where they fell, or in the depths of the oceans where they made the ultimate sacrifice. This Memorial Day, let us take the time to come together as a nation and not only pay tribute to those who have fallen, but to pay tribute to the idea that inspired them, to the idea that there is something greater than oneself, to the idea that is America.
The Nobel Prize-winning U.S. mathematician who struggled with schizophrenia was chronicled in the 2001 movie, A Beautiful Mind, died in a car crash along with his wife in New Jersey. John Forbes Nash Jr. was 86 years old. Russell Crowe, who portrayed Nash in the movie, tweeted, "Stunned, my heart goes out to John and Alicia and family, an amazing partnership, beautiful minds, beautiful hearts." Nash and Alicia Nash, 82 years old, of Princeton Township, were killed in a taxi crash, according to state police. Known as brilliant and eccentric, Nash was associated with Princeton University for many years, most recently serving as a senior research mathematician. He won the Nobel Prize in Economics in 1994 for his work in game theory, which offered insight into the dynamics of human rivalry. It is considered one of the most influential ideas of the 20th century. And so the 68th Cannes Film Festival was brought to a surprising close, with Jacques Audiard's Sri Lankan refugee film taking the festival's coveted top honor, the Palme d'Or. Tipan is about a trio of Sri Lankans who pretend to be a family in order to flee their war-torn country for a housing project in France. A Lebanese production also won the top award for short films at the 2015 festival in Cannes. Waves 98, written, produced and directed by Lebanon's Elie Darir, who is 30 years old, was awarded Cannes' short film Palme d'Or, the highest prize in its category. The film about a high school boy living near Beirut in the late 1990s beat out 7 others nominated for the prize. More than 4,000 films were submitted to the short film category at the prestigious festival held annually in southern France. Congratulations to Elie Darir, and this is hoping that more Lebanese talents will rise above. This marks the end of our bulletin. Now for a reminder of our headlines. Future movement leader, former PM Saad Hariri snaps back at Hezbollah's Nasrallah after the latter warns he might intervene in Arsel. The so-called consultative gathering warns that the presidential vacuum is threatening the existence of the Lebanese state and entity. And Syrian government aircraft launch at least 15 strikes in and around the city of Palmyra following its fall to the Islamic State group. Those were your Monday headlines. Have a nice vacation, and we'll see you again tomorrow for all the latest. Good night.
مش عارف الهول